afternoon. I'm Renee Wyckoff, Research Design Engineer at L&E Research. We're so glad you could join us today for the second webinar in a series of webinars hosted by L&E in 2018. Our webinar series will focus on the 6 steps to perfect qual, and today's webinar will focus specifically on step 2, qualitative research recruiting. Our webinar series ties in with our white paper series as well, so we'll be sending out a copy of the white paper in addition to the recording of this webinar, should you be interested in revisiting or sharing it with your colleagues that couldn't attend. Before we get started, I wanted to mention that we will be taking questions and answering them at the end of this discussion. So let's get things kicked off and get started with meeting our 3 guest speakers. First, we have Teresa Johnson, Director, Sensory Science and Technical Support at the Wendy's Company. Teresa, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thanks, and thank you for having me on this webinar today. I appreciate it. So personally, I have a wonderful husband, have adopted 3 children, utilizing Wendy's employee adoption benefits. I love speaking on behalf of adoption and really how it can build loving families, but my real heart is for those kids in waiting. Professionally, I've been with Wendy's for, it will be 30 years in October, but I started when I was 10 before child labor laws. So if you believe me or not, I've been on the research side of things since 2003, and it was truly my honor to initiate and build the Wendy's Sensory and Consumer Science program we have here today. I love research because it's always changing and growing with new methodologies, things like measuring emotion, all of those kind of things. So I love that there's always an opportunity to learn new things.
Thanks, Teresa. And then we have Heather Hall, Vice President of Project Management, Illumination Research. Heather.
Hi, thank you. I am a mom of 2 kids, and ironically, just like Wendy's, both my kids are redheads. And professionally, I started in 1994, so I've been in market research for 24 years, and started off as a recruiter, ended up managing a phone room, and now I lead a team of awesome project directors for qualitative project management with Illumination Research, and definitely have a passion for recruiting and ways to make it better, more efficient. So I'm really excited about this webinar.
Thanks, Heather. And then we have Brett Watkins, CEO and President of L&E Research. Brett.
Hey, Renee. Well, thanks for taking care of today's events. My background was after getting the research was 10 years of being an SOB, which also stands for something beyond bad things. It stands for son of the boss, where I got to learn the consulting and analytics side of business. And really from there developed a passion for not just qualitative research, but also how to put in better processes and technology to manage that. And that has led me to down the path here now with L&E Research that I've been involved in this company now and leading it for, we are now on 14 years. And leading its growth with our 250 employees has been really been one of my great joys of life. So personally, a wife and 2 fur babies who are staring at me through the glass. Hopefully the glass is soundproof enough that I will be able to, nobody else will be hearing them except me. So my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So without further ado, we will just dive right into this. We're going to get started with a question about process for kicking off projects. So thinking of your process for kicking off a new project with a recruiting partner, if you were to give an amateur researcher a bit of advice on how to get recruiting the ideal participants started off on the right foot, what would that be? And let's start with Teresa.
Okay, I think in my opinion, you said it all in one of the first sentences, and partner is really the key word in that sentence. You want to partner with a company that not just gets warm bodies into a room to get paid for it. You want to be sure that you're working with a partner who truly cares about getting the right consumer into your research study. And we asked, as we were looking at partners, so thankful for the partner we have today, we asked key questions of a recruiting partner up front. So first off, you have to ensure that you have a really good fit with your recruiting partner. Do they have the same values as you and your company? Because in the end, you'll need to trust that partner is doing what's right for your research project. Ask about the stats of their database. Do they have the base of people you need? Are they large enough to support the type and quantity of research that you do? Thirdly, do they have query capabilities? Because they can give you really an idea of incidents before you even start the recruit, which is really important that you're not walking down a path over recruiting something that you can't even get to. And then ask for referrals. How do they treat and work with other customers? That's always great to hear from other people. And if the study is large, you can, like we did, we ran a small test to work out any kinks in either a ballot or research design, how we want to communicate with each other. So those are a couple of things that we did from Wendy's side when we were looking for a research partner.
Thank you, Teresa. Heather, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with Teresa on the partner. I think that's really critical in having a strong partner. I think also just being clear on expectations, being clear on expectations for the recruit, and really kind of having a discussion over who is your ideal respondent. Sometimes, you know, when you're developing a screener, sometimes objectives are missing from what's initially shared. So it's really helpful to have that discussion, but also anticipating any needs. I think it's helpful when you have a partner who has experience and can share their experience and give you recommendations to make your recruit as efficient and high quality as possible.
Got it, thank you. And Brett, what could you tell an amateur researcher?
Well, I think Teresa and Heather really commented greatly about and hit on the relationship aspect of it and those pieces. And I would just probably add on that beyond value alignment and commitment, they touched a little bit on design help, experience with population, the ability to give feedback and input on what the recruit might look like. And I think a third one that is sometimes overlooked, however, also is a strategy. What's the plan? How do we intend to find this population? And quite frankly, those are questions that I think every client should be asking their recruiting partners. What is exactly you plan on doing, and do you have a backup plan if plan A fails? What's the plan then? So just kind of talking out, how this process is going to go and how they intend to execute it. Partners should be able and willing to invest in that piece and clearly outline the steps they intend to take to make it successful.
Got it. So what I hear you all saying is working out a lot of the details up front to try to make the process go as smoothly as possible through the execution.
Absolutely.
Very good. So again, diving in a little bit more, speaking of process, what might your checklist look like when getting ready to turn it over to a recruiting partner? Teresa.
Okay, I'll start. First and foremost, just make sure you're fully aligned with your internal or external clients. We work with both here, mostly internal, but on who they really want for the research project. Are there specific people? Do they visit specific places? An example might be for us, we're doing a Wendy's salad and we want Wendy's salad consumers because we don't want to fire our current consumer. But we also want to maybe talk to users from Panera, right, to see if we can get a new user in our door. We also use a syndicated data source to really understand who our consumers are and really who our competitors' consumers are to ensure that we're really getting a good sample representative of obviously us and other targets, just so we can have that rich research design. We always send written specs to our recruiting partner and have them weigh in on the recruit. One of the most wonderful things is they're the ones that have the experience in recruiting and they have the feedback for you to better get results. So we can get this, or here's what we can't get, or we've tried this before. Is always great help on our end. And then really just continue the conversation with your recruiting partner. Keep working on and honing in the best recruit you really can.
Got it. Thank you. Heather, what would your checklist look like?
I love having a kickoff call. I think so many things come up, and it's a great way to brainstorm, like Renee said, with people who they've got great experience, especially for the more complicated or larger projects. It gives the broader team the opportunity to join the call, answer questions, which allows you to kind of kick the project off on the right foot. So that the kickoff call, I feel like, is critical.
I would definitely agree with that. Brett, do you have anything you could add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I see in most successful, not just projects, but then in the overall relationship, goes back to the expression of you don't know what you don't know. And as researchers, the relationships that are strongest are the ones where everybody in the room is willing to admit, like, I don't know everything to this, so let's talk it through and see what's, as an example, if I'm a recruiter and Teresa approaches me about a project, has Teresa worked with somebody else? What did they learn from that? Were there experiences that that were problematic? And that can obviously go the other way. If Heather comes to us and says, I want to recruit something in a specific niche, we've done that work a lot before. I expect that our team and Heather's expectations, I would assume as well, are, hey, share this information with me. Tell me what you know. So the last thing we all want, we all report to somebody at the end of the day, and the last thing we want is shareholders that are involved in this project to get surprises, right? No surprises. So what can we do to avoid surprises? And that entails us all coming together and admitting, like, okay, we don't know it all, and what are the weaknesses and blind spots that we might be missing here? So we go into it with not only a strategy, but a better understanding of the challenges could take place. And that really just means that great communication is taking place, and fewer surprises. That means that everything goes more smoothly, which means that and clients who are looking to get this information and use it, the best experience.
Thank you. The next question: taking the importance of a well-written screener into consideration, in all of your experience, what is the one thing you've learned and always work into your screener development? This is geared more towards Teresa and Heather.
So what we always have on our side, of course, are the standard demos like age, gender, income, ethnicity with set quotas. We always include catch questions. So some of ours that we use are, which of the following items have you purchased in the past 3 years? And it could be like a Phoenix toaster oven, a solo hoverboard, a catch-all universal remote, and none of the above. So a couple catches to that. If they answer yes to all, that's probably pretty highly unlikely. But just answering through, some of these are fake brands as well, right? Or it could be like the type of restaurants or shops you have visited in the 30 days to buy something for yourself personally, a jewelry store, a furniture store, a fast food restaurant, fine dining restaurant. So if they're answering all of those, you can sort of tell they're just trying to get through, because it's pretty highly unlikely I'm going to be buying jewelry and furniture and all of those kind of good things. So
Right.
We also like to include blinding questions. If you don't want to give away like your research topic, for example, we would say something like, you mentioned you went to a fast food restaurant. What type of beverages did you purchase, or what type of food or beverages did you purchase? We might put something like a breakfast sandwich, a value sandwich, a premium cheeseburger, entree salad. That way they know, we might be doing a cheeseburger, but we included all of these extras to really blind what that research is about. And then really thinking through who you want in the door, because really anything can be included. For us, we might want a premium user who just purchased off our premium menu, or a value user, or one who purchased off of both. Or we might want an adventuresome eater or non-adventuresome eater. So really thinking through like what you want and what's most valuable. And then of course, as always, we have past par. which just protects us on the back end from, some of those professional panelists that like to come to get paid, right, for research studies. So we always have all of those included in our screeners.
Got it. Thank you. And Heather, what is what might be your one thing that you always include?
One thing that I'm super passionate about are backup plans. If we anticipate that we're going to have difficulty finding a certain type of consumer or a certain type of usage or a demographic, I always love to have a backup plan where we tell the recruiters to hold certain people. I never want to get in a position where we spend a week recruiting only to find out that we lost 50% of the people at one question that we anticipated would be an issue, and now we don't have anybody to go back to. I think it's a really smart way to go into it. Hope for the best and plan for the worst seems to work really well for our team and our clients. They really appreciate the proactivity.
I see. So you always go in having a plan B, anticipating some of the difficult spots on a screener.
Yeah, I love telling a client that I always go in looking for their perfect recruit, and then we put some plans in place for hold points. So just in case we run into an issue, I can give them data to say, here's the percent that we're losing. Great news is we've got 25 holds of that particular person. They can select from those people, and it just allows you to keep the recruit moving along quite nicely.
Right, which is very important.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm kind of curious. You as a research design engineer, this is something you do for clients regularly. What is it? What is one thing that you see as one of the well-written other considerations to go into that?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, and Brett has now turned into the moderator of this webinar, apparently. From my perspective, I think what I do is I make sure that I carefully choose how I word questions. It's amazing how the way something is asked can really derail a recruit, and you might think that you've got all these qualifying people, and then when they show up on site for the research, something goes wrong because something just wasn't asked quite the right way, and it's all in the way people interpret a question. So you just have to be sure that when you ask questions, there can't be multiple ways that someone could interpret it. You have to be extremely clear in the way questions are asked, or you'll run into trouble. That's the one thing that I always keep in mind when I'm writing a screener. And I always have someone else put their eyes on it before I send it off to a client, because just because I interpret something one way doesn't mean that someone else might interpret another. So it's always a good idea just to have someone else's eyes on it before you send it off, and kind of dot all your I's and cross your T's. That's what I would say is important for me.
Well, see, that's why you should answer that question and not me.
There you go. So switching gears just a little bit, not so much. What are some of the must-haves in your recruiting partner to ensure that they help you achieve a successful recruit from their end? What are some of the things that they can do to help you? Teresa.
Yeah, for me, I've mentioned these a lot already, but really a good working relationship with the supplier. And this has already been mentioned, but it's so important that they're great at communication and even over communication, right? So really keeping us in the loop, prior to the research, during the research, and after the research, and that that they value your research as much as you do, and really understanding the sample you want your research to end up with. So those are the key things from my perspective.
Thank you. Heather?
For me, communication is everything. Having a partner that understands that clients get anxious when it's never no news is good news when it comes to how a recruit is going. It's always more news is good news. And so I love when someone's able to anticipate and understands the pressure of getting a client update quickly, and also just communicating not just the update, but also here's where we're here, attached is your update, we're on track to complete on time, everything's going well. Or here's your update, looks like we're having some issues with this question, we may have to do this, we'll continue to see how it goes. I love partners that can offer the data and solution.
Got it. So you don't just like the over communication part. You like somebody who comes to the table with, if something isn't going quite right, they might be able to offer a recommendation. If your plan B isn't solid, they might be able to offer a recommendation as far as, this is what I see happening. Here's what we can do to get this moving.
Exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And along the same vein, what is the most valuable service your recruiter can provide in order to be a really good partner to you?
I love when someone can get a really fast jump on the recruit, whether it's launching a survey, pre-identify respondents. That's a huge value, because as we know, timelines can sometimes be really tight. But just because timelines are tight, the quality of the recruit can't suffer. So we have to have people that are able to adjust to that need and understand that we have to change how we're doing things to still deliver the quality respondents and the quality recruits that clients fairly come to expect.
Yeah, that's a good one, because, the quicker you get started, that's how you can, the faster you find out if there are going to be any issues, the better. So you don't, like you said earlier, like you're not a week down the road and then you find out there are issues. So it's always a good idea to get started ASAP. And Teresa.
Yeah, I concur with Heather for sure. The most valuable service, in my opinion, and we've mentioned this already, but that your supplier is really upfront and honest on the information on what they can and can't get. They already have the experience, and that's the most valuable thing to me, is leaning on our partner to say, hey, this is what we want. Can we really get this, right? Because I don't want to start down a path and then go back to our client. Just worst thing is that you ran the research and it's not what they want, right? So making sure that we have exactly what our client wants on the back end. And it really, their experience, their knowledge, like you said, Renee, making sure that our questions are worded right. Any experience and education that they can give us on our end that makes that recruit better, that's what I love. And it really all boils down to really trusting that partner and partnership, to be quite frank. Yeah, that's what I would think is most valuable.
I think it's funny from my end, not funny, as much as interesting, in that when you look at it from the other side, from the recruiter side, I love it when clients are asking questions, the ones you all are describing, which really gets into what I describe as like, how is the sausage made, right? So clients that really ask a lot of questions about, tell me what your plan is, tell me how you go about doing things, tell me how you're going to recruit this. All of this kind of leads back to a really clear understanding of what you can and can't do, but it also gives companies like ours, I love that question, because so many times we see clients that just think that all recruiting is the same. It's some kind of commodity. This is all easy to do. You're just going to make some calls to a database and this all flows forward. And it really now, especially today, as things have evolved, is really the furthest from the truth. It's the question I love getting is, I'm like, thank you. I'd love to answer that question, because you can then really get into the depths of what is this process like, and what are the options, the plan Bs and Cs to these things. What kind of resources do you have to actually tap into the communities and the populations that we want? Because it's not just 20 years ago when we were all doing research based on simple demographic questions, static questions that don't really change, right? My age, once I have a date of birth locked, I kind of know that piece, right? Some demographics change, but others generally, firm and static. Today, with things being so behavioral and attitudinal in terms of basis of measure and what we're trying to achieve and finding folks, those things just are just radically changing every moment. So really getting into, what a recruiter can do, I think as clients, I mean, that's the best question you can ask is, you go to a great restaurant, you don't get to ask the chef how he makes that great sauce because he doesn't want to give up that secret. But in our business, we're all happy to share that. And I think that's a really great question to ask because it then allows us to dive into, okay, what are your capabilities and, what can you invest in this relationship? Because I think the biggest thing that a recruiter can deliver is what I like to describe as tenacity. It's relationship over project. We're going to invest, we have these resources, these things we can do, but at the end of the day, not every project is going to go smoothly. It just can't. We're talking about humans and their emotions and their answers to that. So, the ability and willingness to invest long term in the relationship, but also therefore dive into, well, how you're going to do this and what are your capabilities, really, gets at the must-have, I think, when clients are asking a question.
Thank you, Brad. So given that there are common problems that can arise during the recruiting process, as we know, one of the most damaging to any research would be professional respondents. As researchers, what are you doing during the design process as far as what types of questions you're asking potential respondents and even how you are asking them to ensure that you get the most authentic participants? Heather, let's start with you this time.
I know Renee touched on it earlier, but I love setting up the questionnaire, not only to hide the topic initially, but including red herring questions. I think it eliminates the people who say yes to everything. You list 5 brands and one of them is a brand that doesn't exist and they say yes to it. Well, that's obviously they're not a qualified respondent. I think we all know that people, we have to be more creative with how we're writing questions, even some of the simple questions like past participation. Because a lot of this, the professional respondents know what their answer is supposed to be. So we have to get creative and ask it in ways that is not this standard, have you done any market research studies in the past 6 months? But we've had really good luck with the red herring questions and just really paying attention to the profiles. If people say yes to everything and raising those to the recruiters to replace.
Thank you. Teresa?
From my end, I already mentioned like the traps or catches in the screener past par, but some things that we do on our end is we perform a rescreener on site. And of course, not everything, because that would take a long time, but the most important questions that we want to ensure that person has, we rescreen to make sure they're answering the same way. So that's a good way to make sure you're getting quality respondent. The other thing I love is, and it's our experience, maybe our, but we have one person from the research team who always does the check-in of the respondent just to ensure new faces, right? Because you can get some of those same people showing up, and if you have that one person check-in, they can really catch that. And I'd say on the back end that your supplier is always doing like quality measures of their database and ensuring new quality people. I know that supplier we work with are always asking us like, who do you need? How can we go get these people? So you need that, you love that. And then for us as researchers that we're checking our data on the back end, example, if I'm asking for someone to come in who likes onions and I get on the back end, I hate onions, looking at those responses and deciding what to do with the data.
Got it, thank you. So it sounds also that, depending on your partner, to always be able to offer fresh respondents is really important, because it doesn't leave the onus on you to try to catch these people if we always have a fresh database.
Absolutely.
I understand. And Brett, from your perspective as a recruiting partner, what are some of the solutions that you see in place now? And what do you see coming down the pike as far as possible future solutions to counter this?
Well, I think, some of the things that Teresa and Heather mentioned that are so critical, I think, are incumbent upon recruiting companies. At L&E Research, we talk about connecting with our community so we can connect our clients to our community. And that comes in two phases. One, as Teresa mentioned, is trying to find fresh participants, trying to always reach new people to engage in the process. But it also is the method to which you are employing the means to monitor behavior of the people that are in your database now. As an example for us, I mean, we've invested over 7 figures in proprietary technology that does nothing but just monitor behavior. Every time they call, every time they respond to something, it's always being captured and monitored, information they're changing in their profiles. These are all things that lead to why there's nearly 100,000 people that we've identified as folks that we generally, we've quarantined, if you would, that we don't put in research studies because of just behaviors that suggest they are the wrong kind of people that clients are looking for. They are the professionals who are looking for that. I think that we can also go further, however, as a recruiting industry as well, which one of the biggest things that used to actually be pretty common in the industry today, but I don't see anymore, and I really think that it would be great to see our recruiters that share third-party validation information that allows us to all go back and share within our panels, hey, who do we have and who is participating. These third-party companies could validate that information so they could provide the service that improves the process overall for everyone by identifying the person who is being, dishonest about, when's the last time they participated, because maybe they went to some other study at another location or company to make that happen. So I think that's a big piece of the today. But what I see tomorrow, I really believe that the technology of video is going to be a really great opportunity that can be leveraged to improve the overall quality of the research process, including recruitment. It almost begins to evolve into more not only just a audition kind of process to where clients can actually get to see the people before they participate in the research. And we're beginning to see this with clients today utilizing online qualitative before they get to in-person experiences, as an example. It's a combination kind of tool. But I think video also through text analytics as well as through just the sheer ability to share information in that video rapidly in a more organized and collated sense can give clients a really quick, easy way to, as opposed to, we all know that the challenge of our industry is length of screener and the information we want to collect to get the right person, but we also are aware of the respondent fatigue issue on the other side, and it's just really the best way to try to find the right people. I think video is going to give us the opportunity, as we continue to hone our ability to be better and better with that, to use that as a means to improve recruitment as well as give clients really the absolute best people.
Got it, thank you. So switching gears just a little bit, with the multitude of technologies available today to assist with recruiting and field work, what would you say the major benefits are, and what are some of the downsides that need to be overcome when using some of the newer technologies? Teresa?
Yeah, so I love new technology and what it can offer. There's a lot now online research, right, that you can reach a lot of people with a single communication. But there are downsides as well. I think we need to think about, we've all heard now the bots, right, and how they can answer questions to get through survey, but also mimic human behavior. So even you can't even time a survey anymore because they can go in and mimic that piece. And then really amount of people on these professional panels could be like 10 plus online, and they get dozens of survey invites a day. So talking about professional respondents really has integrity compromises to your data on the back end. And I'm seeing a lot of nowadays, and it's really driven from the client side that we need the speed, and there's these cheaper DIY services. But what can happen is there's a lot of poorly designed surveys. I don't know if you guys have seen them out there or not, but it really hurts us all by irritating respondents, and in the end leads to incorrect business decisions. But that speed, quick surveys are not usually representative of the sample. For example, somebody who responds immediately versus a couple days, or on a weekend versus a weekday, they're just different. So we just need to make sure it's fully representative, because not everybody is online, like lower income or less educated or rural people. The other thing is English as a second language is definitely growing. So understanding, how do we survey and what language is pretty important. And I'd say lastly is, don't pick your sample based on price alone. As Brett said, it's not a commodity. You sort of get what you pay for. So you want quality sample for quality results, and to ultimately make great business decisions for your company.
Thank you. And Heather?
Yeah, so I think, I know there are so many ways that technology really helps all of us. I think on the recruiting end, as I've mentioned before, just being able to speed up the recruit, reach a lot of people on the database versus old school, sitting on the phone with paper sample calling. I think it's huge. We recruited 600 people in less than a week by using technology to help identify as many as possible. It allows you to reach people where they are. The other benefit that we use a lot is doing homework ahead of time. So not only does it allow clients to see the homework ahead of time, but it also allows us to use the 2 hours that we have them in the group, for example, to focus on diving in deeper to their homework and really hitting the guide, because the guides are just getting more and more, they're really filling up a lot. So I think it helps efficiency. I think the glitch or maybe downside are just technology and the glitches that you can run into. For example, webcam, using webcams, it's a great tool. You have to know what you're talking about ahead of time with respondents, educating them on what's expected, what technology they need to use. We've had all kinds of people. We had someone who was done a tech check and was beautiful, and then they call in for the webcam in their car. So it's just really taking everything that you know and anticipating every issue, every technology issue, and making sure everybody's clear and anticipating those issues.
Got it. Thank you. And Brett, what can you add to that?
Well, I gotta say, I love the fact that Heather was talking about how you can use technology in a means to broaden like the research process. We're really just beginning to see more and more clients use, online and tools that allow you to have conversations with people. So if you're doing in person, you can really kind of focus on the specific issue. No pun intended there. But I think that technology really is, Teresa mentioned this as well, it's a great way to be able to have more ways to engage people at home and experience. Research becomes more behavioral, and we focus more on what are people doing and how are they doing it, as opposed to trying to ask the why piece of that. Technology really is a fantastic means of enabling us to see in home or the experience. I think the thing that everybody has to remember, though, is case in point, at L&E Research, we're currently doing our own research right now with participants to try to better understand the consumer behavior and the consumer perspective on research itself. How do they see us? How do they see the industry? And what are some of the challenges and the shortfalls that they're experiencing, so we can try to improve them? While we're going through that research process, you can be amazed at the number of people that have computers but don't know that you can actually have a conversation like we are today online, right? You don't even know that the computer has a microphone or a camera and has the ability to do that, or what do they do on their computer. not just the elderly who may be, technology challenged. A lot of people, if it's not a central part of their life, we all have a laptop or desktop typically at our, at our desks and are working all the time on it. Not everybody, in fact, most people aren't power users. So bearing that in mind and understanding when you go into a project, what audience is going to be contributing to that and not, how can we tap into them? Those are the upsides. I mean, the downsides as well is just knowing that the majority of people are not computer and/or technology savvy, mobile phone savvy. That obviously continues to improve as the younger generation become more prevalent, especially in the workplace society. But we've still got a ways to go before we.
Are you still with us, Brett?
I am still here.
Oh, sorry. I thought you cut off there. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. In closing, is there anything that we did not touch on here that you think is critical when it comes to recruiting and making sure the process yields the desired results? Anything that we didn't ask that you think is really important? Teresa?
No, honestly, I believe we covered it all. I'm looking forward to question and answer session.
Me too. Heather?
No, I think it's been a great conversation. But I agree with Teresa. I think we've covered a lot.
Excellent. And Brett, do you have anything that you think is really important that we did not ask?
It's a challenging subject, but it's really one that's really good for both Heather and Teresa that I'd ask of them, which is, we get the feedback all the time that the number one thing we want to hear is what I call the feedback. Tell me, did I make a difference? Tell me, what's this going to mean? Are we going to get to learn? What was the outcome of the research? And I'd really like to hear from, I know Heather's probably got experience with clients as well on this. Is there a way that we can get consumers more involved, actually complete that circle? Because I know that the challenge is, but I'd like to hear the perspective of knowing that people definitely want that.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Teresa, Heather, and Brett, for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. We're going to take some questions for the next few minutes, but first we'd like to thank Focus Forward, our transcription partner, who so graciously volunteered to transcribe this webinar for free. Focus Forward is just one of our technology partners that we've partnered with to bring a complete qualitative toolkit to our clients. We'll be emailing out the recording of this webinar, and you can view this webinar or download a copy of this free transcript at our website, as well as learn about all of our exciting technologies offered through L&E solutions at www.leresearch.com. So let's get started with some questions. I see one question here. Says, do you have any suggestions for recruiting B2B participants? I know, Teresa, you do consumers. I don't think you recruit B2B. So Heather, do you have any suggestions for recruiting B2B participants?
I think there's not a blanket answer because we see all different kinds of B2B from very specific roles in certain countries versus a general C-suite level. I think it's important, it goes back to the initial start of the conversation of knowing good partners with good sample, but also understanding the time it takes to reach different levels of B2B and to really find these people. I think there are amazing partners who sample, they have awesome sample for B2B. Same thing for C-suite level respondents. I think you have to tailor the partner and the approach to the client and the specific respondent that you're looking for.
Yeah, to piggyback on Heather's feedback, it really is a very broad question. I used to in my previous life of 10 years experience with this kind of work, you know, some of the biggest challenges I see with B2B recruitment is really understanding the decision-making process. So in consumer, we talk about, you know, we're able to ask the question, you know, who does the shopping or who's primarily responsible or so forth, right? In business to business, many times that decision-making or, you know, who's the end decision maker is not very clear. And in fact, many times it's a committee kind of approach. An example I would give would be, you know, in a commercial construction environment about specifying a particular electrical product as an example. You know, you could have an architect that's involved in that. You could have the larger corporate, you know, buyer program if the company is big enough to actually have somebody in procurement, especially responsible for it. You could have an actual on-site engineer if the building is big enough. There's just so many variables that go with that. I generally find that clients, the biggest thing that I would see that in terms of feedback from a process standpoint is just knowing that before you ever actually get to the recruitment and actually get to ask the questions, you're going to need to really understand, which, you know, there's almost a market assessment piece to this. You're going to have to understand the dynamics of the industry and who's making the decisions, how those decisions are made, and why, and knowing that by each SIC vertical, there might be some variance to it. But from a recruitment standpoint, how do I get to the right people? I really, you know, totally agree with Heather that there are people that specialize in particular verticals, and generally speaking, they are going to have expertise there. Probably one variance might be in a more medical sense, and there are medical experts. But as an example, you know, in L&E, we recruit specifically to our markets because, you know, we focus on our markets, and healthcare, you know, professionals, physicians is one particular channel. So that's something that we have dedicated resources that we're working on constantly to try to build. But the B2B environment is a very varied one, and that could go down a lot of rabbit holes in terms of different directions as far as how to best identify the best recruit.
Thank you. So the next question, what are some different options for database management software that you have used in the past?
Well, I assume that question is based on our end as a supplier. We built our own solution based on when we started on this path 8 or 9 years ago, the lack of options that were available to us. There are a few companies out there today that can, I think, do offer credible solutions. And someone wants to reach out to me specifically, I'm happy to give them, you know, those links and forward them on to the right people. A couple of solutions I can't really speak to intelligently, as I just haven't really vetted them fully since a couple of them are new. But there are a few that I know that have been out there that are doing good work, and certainly I'm happy to refer anybody who wants. I know my contact information. I think if it's not up there, I'm happy to provide it, and you can actually find it on our website very easily. It's all there. I'm happy to share that.
Thanks very much. Heather, could you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's more Brett's expertise.
Got it. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we weren't leaving anyone out as far as answers.
I appreciate it.
Got it. Let's see, do we have any other questions? I think that's it for questions. Elizabeth, you can correct me if I'm wrong. We'll give it just another few seconds to see if anything else pops up. I think that is it. As mentioned previously, we'll be emailing out the recording of this webinar, and you can view this webinar as well as learn about our exciting technologies at www.leresearch.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, and be on the lookout in your email for an invite to our next webinar that we're hosting in this series. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.